Hi, this is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Parrots. It just became tomorrow, and it is the 26th of October 2016. I hope I'm not too tired to do this video, but let's give it a shot. Hope I don't misspeak or have to correct myself. I think this is an important video. I want to talk to you about voting your faith and voting the Bible, as opposed to voting for one candidate or another. About a year ago, there was a handful of people running on the Democratic ticket and 3 or 4 hands full running on the Republican ticket. And their personalities and their way of doing things were very different one from the other. But now we're down to 2 candidates and have been for some time. Now, every Republican doesn't feel the same way Donald does about everything. And every Democrat does not feel the way Hillary does about everything. And yet, well, they're individual people and they stand behind what they say. They do represent a party platform. So it's those platforms I'm going to try to limit, although I can't do it without speaking about them because they speak for the platform. But I want to try to mention the platforms as opposed to the individuals. Hillary has basically said, and so has her party, that if you vote for her, you're going to get pretty much what you've already got. What you've had for 8 years is pretty much what you're going to have for the next 4 or 8. And Donald has said, no, if you elect me or vote for me, you're going to get a change. We're going to take America from where it is to where it used to be. And the values that we used to have, we're going to have again, and America will be much better for that. Well, the moderator said that the first thing he wanted to talk about was the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court is important or has something to do with the presidency because the Supreme Court justices are nominated by the presidency. And then they're voted on by members of Congress. You and I have nothing to do with it. We don't nominate them. We don't put them in office. And yet what they do and decisions they make could change America greatly one way or the other. And that would affect all of us. So the moderator said we're going to start with Hillary. I guess they drew straws or something. And asked her with the importance of what the Supreme Court justices do. What do you have to say about the Supreme Court? And Hillary answered, and I took notes, knowing that I was going to discuss some of these subjects with my viewers later on that same night, and that there would be no way I could check on what had been said. It wouldn't be on the network yet. It wouldn't be on the news yet before my program started, so I better get it right. And regarding her opinion of the Supreme Court, Hillary said, I presume she's speaking for the platform, women and the LGBTG, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, need the Supreme Court to represent them. Yeah, that's what I said. That's what she said. I wrote it down. And I thought, you got to be kidding. The Supreme Court does not represent anybody. It's not their job. They don't make laws. If a law is going to be passed, something new is going to come into law, it comes from the Congress and is signed by the president. If the president vetoes it or fails to sign it, it can still go back to Congress. The rules change on how many more people have to vote, but something can go into law without the president's signature. That's how we get new laws. Supreme Court has nothing to do with representing us or with making laws. Now, I was represented once by an assemblyman of California. I was quite ill and handicapped after some very serious back surgery that failed. And I had been a dog trainer, and a couple of my dogs were already trained, and 2 of them became service dogs. And I was going somewhere on an airplane and told them that I'd have a service dog. And I got some hassle back. I called my assemblyman. He got on another airline, not only got my dog and I on the airline, but managed to get me in seat number 1, because seat number 1 doesn't have a seat in front of it, so the floor space is bigger. And the dog was bigger because had to carry some of the stuff and also assist me in getting up. That is someone that I voted for, who later represented me. But we, the people, do not vote for the Supreme Court justices, and they do not represent us. Knowing I was going to speak about this earlier today, because I guess you've noticed I'm a bit old, and I didn't want to trust my memory in something this important, and I checked it out. What is the function of the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court document has some similarities with this document. You interpret it. You do not change it. Somebody comes to me as a 60-plus year ordained minister, and they have a problem. We go to the book. I read it. I explain it to the individual that's looking for an answer. I didn't write it. I can't change it. I didn't write the Constitution. None of us alive now did. We can't change it. I will be, when I upload and process this video, before any of you see it. And sometimes if I do it during the night, somebody sees it before I get up in the morning and make changes. But I'm going to type in, I'm going to give you some links that if you question any of the things I'm telling you, you might check those links to check me out, make sure I'm giving you good information. The function of the Supreme Court is to interpret laws And they consider the greatest law they have to interpret is the Constitution. They do not represent anybody, and they do not make laws. Not the way it works in our America. When it came to um, Donald's side, he did not talk about what she said because what she said was not in response to the question. And the original question was about the Supreme Court, and it was now he had 2 minutes to say something about the Supreme Court. He said that he favored the Second Amendment and would not try to change it. That's the gun possession one. He said he was pro-life. I will give you the link, but in September of this year, he wrote on Google that he would only vote for abortion or be in favor of abortion in the matter of rape, incest, or life of the mother. Hillary had said women had the right to deal with their own bodies as though pregnancy was a disease that you could choose to treat or untreat. She didn't use the word disease, but something over which a woman should control. Donald answered, and I'm going to give you a link for this. I don't know, although if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've watched other similar ones, and you know what late-term abortion is. There's a video out now that's been viewed a lot of an undercover camera where a young woman is being counseled about a late-term or about an abortion. And she's being told, and I want you to see it for yourselves if you'd like to. You don't have to, but you question my viewing of it. I'd like you to. She is told by a counselor that an abortion is quicker, safer, and less painful than childbirth. I want you to see a video of a late-term abortion. The subject was rather new 8 years ago when there was a change in parties representing us in the presidency. And I knew and had read some of the opinions of the present president regarding it. When Donald said that he only approved of abortion in the case of rape, incest, or death, not convenience of the mother, not future ability to care for a child, but life of the mother. And he said that taking a baby halfway out of the mother and killing it so that at the time the rest of the baby is pulled out, the baby is dead. Now, originally, a number of years ago, when they did this, they used to require um, a birth certificate and then a death certificate. I really don't know what's required now, probably nothing, if it's considered that the baby is born dead. What do you believe? What do you think the Bible teaches? At what point is a fetus a person? Donald says, Hillary, you might think that late-term abortion is okay with you, but it's not okay with me. And Hillary did not respond. She did not say, and she had every opportunity to say, oh, I don't think it's okay to take the baby halfway out, kill it, and then pull the rest of it out. She didn't say. She simply didn't make a comment. Her original comment was that she thought Roe versus Wade that decision should remain. Then that had been a matter regarding the Supreme Court, but it turned out to be a discussion on abortion. And I brought into it with my group, what is the function of the Supreme Court and what is the Constitution? And on the basis of what Hillary said, what is it to be represented by a politician? They then brought up another matter, which is the border. And I want to give you a link about a past law that was enacted in 1979. You may not be aware of, or you may have forgotten about. Donald spoke for a lot of people, but at the same time, he offended a lot of people when he said he was in favor of no Muslims coming into this country at all until they could be properly vetted. He didn't use that language at the beginning. He said something like, until we know all about them and who they are, and so forth. Did you know, by the way, that Muslims are not allowed to promise to keep the Constitution of the United States unless it agrees? In other words, if anybody wants to change it and make it agree, change the Constitution. But as the Constitution is, they cannot promise unless they are allowed to have Sharia law and their Quran. I'll give you a link for that. It may be up a couple of hours before I get the link on, but I will get it up there. The law that I spoke of in 1979 was when Jimmy Carter was president. And many Americans were held hostage in Iran. The law was passed. Many Iranians were sent back to Iran. Every student here on a student visa was looked into. There were 50,000 students here at that time. They could not stay unless they would agree to, or unless they would agree to be against the Shiite, or be against being a Shiite Islamist. Unless they agreed to that or had a medical emergency, many of them were sent back to Iran, and all the rest of them were checked on regularly. That's just about the same thing that Donald said. I wish he wouldn't have used the term Muslims, because Muslim is a religion, and it just isn't cool. It's not presidential to talk about a person's religion, although Hillary didn't have a problem with Catholics and evangelicals in an email, so we know what her thinking is, but she thought it, but didn't say it publicly. I think it would be better if Donald had said something about, we don't want anybody in this country. We don't know what they stand for, and we don't know whether they're terrorists. And until we can know that, we don't want anybody in this country. And not mentioned the fact Muslims, because that has upset some. But it didn't upset Jimmy Carter, and it didn't upset any Democrats back when he used that law. There was, and I want to check something else here. There was another thing I wanted to mention, and that has to do with the border. As you know, all my ministry from late 53 and then beginning in full-time in 1954 has been with the Spanish language, both in the United States and in Mexico and other countries. I was looking on my medical report the other day, and it said not Latin or Hispanic. I don't know why my medical record would say that, but I thought, don't they know that I'm Hispanic? Well, people look at my blue eyes and just decide I have a little more Spanish than Indian. But it's a very delicate subject for me personally. And yet, I'm an American, and it's election time, and I have to do what's good for my country. But just the idea of closing a border to some people, true, if you have an open border, and that's what Hillary suggested. I had never heard that from her before last Wednesday. But she was talking about open borders on this hemisphere, like Alaska, Canada, United States, Mexico, the countries of Central America, the countries of South America. We would be, she didn't say it, but it seemed as though she's thinking European Union, that which England pulled out of a couple months ago because they simply had no control over who could enter and exit their country. Somebody that they didn't want in their country could go into France and then come under the tunnel, and they entered the European Union from another country, but they could come. They lost their monetary system and had no control. They went from controlling their country to being controlled by a larger entity. You've heard sermons against the New World Order for years. On Sunday mornings for the last 6 months, I've been preaching prophecy. I know what's going to happen. I know there will be a dictator type person we call Antichrist in charge for 7 years, and some of the things they will do and how bad it will be. But it's like my eventual funeral. I'd like to see it put off for as long as I possibly can. It seems like the party that's in office now and that's giving us to understand that if elected, it will continue to be headed that way. There was talk about the internet being given to the United Nations. Have you checked to see who's running the United Nations? Oh, we're there. We're important. We're not running it. And the United Nations has adopted the plan of another previous organization in which one of their goals is to have less population. Now, I don't know if they're planning on killing us old folks off, or maybe abortion is the way they want to do it. I don't think they're going after middle-aged people, so most of you are probably okay. It's the unborn children and us old people probably that have to worry. But controlling population, there will be, if this is adopted by 2030, which they're hoping for, no nation coming into it will allow their citizens to have guns. It will be big government. What's the difference between big government and little government? Well, I was teaching school, and a neighbor introduced me to a friend of theirs. And the friend said, "Oh, you're an ordained minister and you teach in this district. How is that possible?" And I said, "I haven't found a problem." And he said, "Well, you should see the book that one of my kids brought home." And I talked to the teacher and I talked to the principal, and I went down and I talked to them at the district office, and they didn't do anything. And I said, "Did you talk to the school board?" "No." "I can do that?" And then he said, "I'm a successful attorney. I have an office full of people that work for me, and I have all kinds of machines and all kinds of stuff. If you can do anything, it's all yours. Do something." He said, "And besides, I have some influence in a number of different churches in this area." Well, we have a couple of churches in that area too, and we also have a Bible college. And the kids of the teachers go to that school district. So the fire department thought they might have to close us down. They'd never had so many people in a meeting. And of course, we won. It was material that the very fine Christian assistant superintendent didn't have time to read, and he gave it to another teacher to look it over. And that teacher thought it was okay. And when, through my efforts, they learned what it really was, he was in agreement that it wasn't okay. So we sort of went. That's close to home. In our little area, our city, not even the county, but just our little area, we were able to make a change about what our kids were taught in school. That's been a long time ago. I don't think the state of California has anything to say about it now. I believe probably Washington, D.C. will tell you what your children are going to read in school. Whether or not your children can pray in school. When I became a teacher there in 1965, I was asked to play the piano for the choir and to be the building representative for NEF, National Educators Foundation, an organization of born-again public school teachers. A couple years later, I became the regional president. They don't even exist anymore. I used to open my class with prayer, and I let the kids decide if they wanted prayer or not, and they all voted for prayer. And then every year I let them vote. You want individual volunteer to pray? You want silent prayer? What do you want? They came up with different things every year. When we had the big one, and the big earthquake in Southern California, and there was a certain movie I wanted to pick up to show my classroom, and I lived real close to the district office. So I asked my principal, could you go start my class for me while I pick it up, and I'll be there shortly? Well, he was ready to do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and it was a class who had voted that a volunteer would pray out loud. Dear Lord, may the people who are going by in an ambulance not be hurt, and just all kind of praying was good. You just don't have that anymore. That it's gone from small, where you decide how your child will be raised, with your child, your health care, the things real close to you. It's gotten to where those decisions are made farther and farther and farther from you. If it goes beyond Washington, where does it go after that? It goes to the United Nations. And their plans are not for you and I to be preaching the gospel. Let me check my notes and see if there was anything else that I wanted to mention before I close this video. I talked about the border, but I didn't elaborate. You can't regulate your people if you can't regulate who's in your country. And I think most of us care about who's in our country. We have a hard time controlling crime with the people that are here now. Not everybody that crosses the border, legally or illegally, is a criminal. Not everybody's out to get you, but many are. And think about it. As I said, it's something very close to my heart. People I love, good people you would love to have as neighbors. One came as a babe in arms. You would not know by looking or speaking with that friend of mine that they were not an American citizen. English is just as good as mine. They look just like me. They sound just like me. Not a citizen. It's difficult. When November 8th comes, don't think so much about WikiLeaks and he groped somebody. And by the way, I don't know that groping, although I certainly wouldn't want it done to me, is in the same category with getting your DNA on somebody's blue dress. But nevertheless, instead of just considering the personalities, think about that party's platform. And if that person is elected, what that party platform could mean for you and your family and America. And vote your faith. I always end my videos by saying, until the next video, God bless you. I'm going to end this one by saying, till the election and afterwards, God bless America and you.